Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going, well, very deep, guided by an incredible collection of sources you've shared with us, into a story that really challenges our ideas about closeness.
It really does.
We're exploring what happens when two people become, I suppose, too close. We're diving into the mystery and the tragedy of June and Jennifer Gibbons.
Also known as the Silent Twins.
Exactly, the silent twins.
And this is, I think, one of the most chilling cases in modern psychological history. It's not just a story about identical twins with a strong bond.
No, it's so much more than that.
It's a deep exploration of what psychologists call shared psychosis, or folie à deux. But this is that concept taken to its absolute, and I mean lethal, extreme.
The sources really force you to look at that line where intimacy stops being a good thing, where it stops being supportive and becomes, well, what? A kind of consumption.
An existential consumption. That's a great way to put it. It's a codependency so total, so overwhelming, that it actually led to a death pact.
So our mission today is to unpack that entire timeline. The isolation, their secret language, the unbelievable creativity, and then, of course, the 11 years they spent institutionalized.
All to understand how they arrived at that final, terrible decision.
But to really feel the weight of this, I think we have to start at the end, right at the moment that pact was fulfilled.
I agree. You have to start there.
Yeah.
So the scene is 1993. The setting is, well, it's just the quiet Welsh countryside. Very unremarkable.
And June and Jennifer, they're young women by now. They're being moved.
Right. They're in transit from Broadmoor Hospital, which is a high-security facility, to a lower-security clinic. And this move, it's supposed to be a step towards freedom, towards a future.
You can just picture it, can't you? The two of them in the back of the vehicle, side by side, probably mirroring each other's posture, just like they always did.
And then Jennifer, who is the younger twin by just 10 minutes, she leans her head on June's shoulder. It's an image that could almost be peaceful.
Almost. Until the silence is broken.
Yes. There's a whisper. One of the sources, it details the staff's observations, notes she whispered it just to June, but it was loud enough to be heard.
Yeah.
She says, "At long last, we are out."
We are out. And the timing of that, it's not about leaving Broadmoor, is it?
No, not at all. It was something much more profound. It was like a spiritual announcement that a much bigger transition was about to happen.
And then, almost right after she says it, the silence becomes permanent.
Jennifer Gibbons slips into a deep coma. Just like that. Right there in the car. She dies moments later.
And the medical staff, they were just stunned.
Completely baffled. I mean, the speed of it, the finality. So naturally, this is where the investigation starts.
And what do they find?
Well, that's the thing. They find nothing. The medical examiners do a thorough workup. There's no poison, no sign of violence, no drug overdose, absolutely nothing.
So what's the cause of death?
The clinical cause is listed as acute myocarditis.
Which is what exactly?
A sudden severe inflammation of the heart muscle. Essentially, her heart just stopped with no clear medical reason why.
Okay, so that's a medical anomaly. But this is where the story pivots, isn't it? This is where it becomes a psychological phenomenon.
Exactly. Because for June, the surviving twin, this wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't even a mystery.
The sources are so clear on this. For her, it was the execution of an agreement.
A contract. June later confirmed to Marjorie Wallace, the journalist who followed their case for years, that Jennifer's death was planned. It was the only way either of them could move forward. One of them had to be, in their words, extinguished.
So Jennifer's collapse wasn't an illness?
No, it was a promise fulfilled. And for June, her liberation was instantaneous.
So that's the central, horrifying question we have to answer today. How do two people, two sisters, get so trapped that one has to offer her life as a transaction for the other's freedom? Okay, let's unpack this. We have to go back.
We have to go all the way back. Back 30 years to the circumstances that created this impenetrable fortress around them.
And the genesis of it all, it seems to be this profound, almost total isolation.
It is. June and Jennifer were born in 1963. Their father was with the RAF, so they were born in Yemen. But the family moves back to the UK and eventually settles in a town in Wales.
And the sources really emphasize the environment there. They are the children of Caribbean immigrants.
And crucially, they're the only black children in their entire community.
The only ones.
That's the first critical layer of trauma. As young children, they were subjected to constant, intense bullying.
Yeah.
The world just actively rejected them.
And for two kids who are already incredibly close, identical twins, What does that do to you? Their response wasn't to fight back.
No, it was a total retreat, a retreat inward. They just decided if the outside world is going to hurt us, we will reject the outside world. And that meant rejecting its primary tool,
Sandwich.
verbal communication. It was a swift and absolute withdrawal. By about age 4, it was solidified. They refused to speak to anyone. Teachers, doctors, eventually even their own parents could barely get a word out of them.
And psychologists at the time, they had a name for this, right?
They did. They labeled it elective mutism.
I want to pause on that term. Elective. It
Yeah.
makes it sound like a choice, a simple choice.
And it really wasn't. I mean, yes, it's characterized by the choice not to speak, but it's not about an inability to form words. It was a phobia, a deep, profound anxiety connected to social speech.
So it was a defense mechanism.
An absolute defense mechanism. They used silence to close the borders of their reality.
But, and this is the key, the name Silent Twins is so misleading.
Profoundly misleading.
Because they weren't silent at all. They were silent to us.
Exactly. To the outside world. Between themselves, inside their bedroom, which was their entire universe, they spoke constantly.
And this is where it gets really strange and fascinating. The language they used.
The sources describe it meticulously. It was a high-speed, bird-like chirping language. It was frantic, constant, and completely impenetrable to anyone else.
And this wasn't just, typical twin speak that some kids develop.
No. This was a highly sophisticated, accelerated blend. It took elements of Barbadian slang from their parents, mixed it with distorted English, and was spoken at this incredibly fast pace.
So fast, it just sounded like a code.
It was a code. I mean, researchers had to use sophisticated audio equipment just to slow down the recordings to even begin to analyze it. It showed their brains were just wired to communicate hyper-efficiently with one single person.
And the purpose wasn't just communication, it was boundary drawing.
It was the ultimate act of boundary drawing. And the expert analysis concludes this is really the foundation of the whole tragedy.
Because it built this wall that shut the world out.
But it also welded their two identities together inside that wall.
So the language becomes the psychological umbilical cord.
Precisely. It reinforces this idea that their thoughts, their feelings, their existence, it's all a shared commodity. There was no I, there was only we.
Which takes us into what was actually going on inside that shared world.
Let's talk about the incredibly dark creativity that came out of this.
Because trapped in the silence, they found an outlet, they wrote. A lot.
They were astonishingly prolific. Their bedroom wasn't just a prison, it was a writing studio. They wrote constantly. Novels, plays, radio broadcasts, hundreds and hundreds of pages.
But the content, it was a direct reflection of the darkness they were living in.
Oh, absolutely. These weren't happy stories. Their subject matter was consistently violent, darkly erotic, filled with stories of crime, heartbreak, and moral decay.
I mean, one of June's novels was called The Pepsi Cola Addict.
A really gritty, almost noir story about a teenager, drug use, a bleak working-class life. Jennifer's work often leaned into themes of medical horror, the destruction of the body.
So this creativity, it wasn't therapy. It was just a channel for all this suppressed rage and confusion.
And a prelude to the real-world violence. This is where we get to the formal diagnosis that defines their whole existence, folie à deux.
Which literally means?
The folly of two, a shared psychotic disorder. And this isn't just, two people who think alike. This is a complete dissolving of psychological boundaries, where delusions are shared and mutually reinforced.
And the sources, they give these staggering physical examples of this synchronization.
They are deeply unsettling. They would move in perfect rhythm. Walking down a hall, their steps would be perfectly mirrored. At dinner, they'd lift their forks to their mouths at the exact same millisecond.
It's like watching a single mind controlling two bodies.
Even their physiology was linked. They were observed breathing in the same pattern, but it went deeper. The psychosomatic stuff is incredible.
If one got sick.
The other would often show the same symptoms: vomiting, headaches. There are accounts of one feeling a sudden pain and the other crying out, even if they were in another room and couldn't have seen what happened.
It's like the pain signals were being transmitted between them.
It suggests their empathy was so heightened, the barrier between them so thin, that they were essentially sharing a single nervous system stretched across two bodies.
But here's the crucial twist, and the sources really stress this. This unity, this seamless connection, it wasn't love.
Not at all. It was a profound, deadly rivalry. Marjorie Wallace, the journalist, she called it a Gothic horror story.
So while they presented this united front to the world, internally, it was a constant war.
A zero-sum game.
Yeah.
They were locked in this desperate struggle for autonomy, for the right to exist as an individual. And the only real proof we have of this war is in their secret diaries.
And the quotes from those diaries are just devastating. They're not records of affection. They're records of murderous hatred.
Listen to Jennifer's words. The clarity is brutal. My sister, a dark shadow robbing me of my own sunlight is my torment.
Robbing me of my sunlight. She sees June as something that's literally draining her life force.
And June felt the same way. She wrote, "We have become a fatal attraction in each other's eyes. One of us must die."
One of us must die. That wasn't just dramatic teenage writing.
It was their operational thesis. It was the core belief that fueled everything.
Which was this idea they had, the single soul theory.
Exactly. They genuinely, truly believed that they shared a single soul, and that this one soul was simply not powerful enough to run two separate human bodies.
That is a terrifying concept, a kind of psychological resource scarcity.
And if you believe that, if you truly believe you only have half an identity, then the only logical conclusion inside that shared psychosis is ruthless.
For one to live, the other has to be extinguished.
It is the ultimate boundary failure. Separation, the normal psychological process of growing up, wasn't an option for them. The only path forward they could see was destruction.
And eventually that internal pressure cooker, it just became too much. It had to spill out.
It did, and it forced them into contact with the law.
So let's talk about that crisis point. The escalation from writing about crime to actually committing it.
Their actions weren't typical criminal acts. They weren't trying to profit. It seems more like they were boundary testing, or maybe even trying to provoke the system into separating them.
They started with petty theft, but then it got more serious.
Yes, it escalated to arson. They set a number of small fires in deserted buildings. It was the external manifestation of their internal breakdown, a cry for help expressed through social danger.
And that, of course, led to their confinement.
Indefinite confinement at Broadmoor Hospital.
Which we should be clear is not a regular hospital.
No, Broadmoor is a high-security psychiatric facility in England. It's for patients who are considered criminally insane or extremely dangerous. They were committed there in 1982.
And they stayed there for 11 years.
11 long years. And during that time, the system tried everything to break this pathological bond. The doctors there, they recognized immediately that the primary illness was the relationship itself.
So what was the approach?
Two main things: medication and forced physical separation. They were put on antipsychotics, antidepressants, trying to stabilize the delusions.
Did it work?
It failed completely.
Yeah.
The medication had almost no effect on the core disorder. And the separation attempts, they were a disaster.
How does physical separation fail?
Because the link wasn't physical. Even when they were in wings of the hospital miles apart, they would just regress. They became catatonic. They'd stop eating, stop speaking at all. They became ghosts, completely non-functional.
Wow. So the very treatment designed to save them was actually shutting them down.
It was a devastating catch-22 for the doctors. They came to this agonizing conclusion, and I'm quoting from the sources here, that the twins' proximity was slowly killing each other.
So being together was destroying them, but being apart was also destroying them.
The only treatment had to address the bond itself, which meant removing half of the equation. And ironically, it was in this highly controlled environment that the twins themselves finalized that very solution.
The pact.
In Broadmoor, the idea became a concrete plan. They agreed they could never be free, never be normal, as long as they were both alive. One had to make the ultimate sacrifice.
And Jennifer, the younger twin, she volunteered.
She did. And you can speculate why. Based on their diaries, Jennifer often felt she was the one in June's shadow. Maybe June was slightly more expressive, her novels were a little more successful. The sacrifice, it was her one final, profound act of self-determination.
Even if that determination meant non-existence.
And we have confirmation of this pact from the journalist Marjorie Wallace.
She had built a relationship with them.
She had. And she recounts her final conversation with Jennifer. Jennifer just looked her right in the eye and said, completely without emotion, "I'm going to die. We've decided."
And Wallace, she just dismissed it.
She thought it was a delusion. She couldn't conceive of the clinical precision of their intent. She thought it was just part of the illness.
But it wasn't.
It was a contract. And Jennifer made that confession just days before their transfer. The death was timed perfectly, not just to their past, but to the exact moment of their supposed release into a new life.
Which brings us back to the car. Jennifer collapses. Her heart stops.
And we have to talk about the most startling fact in this entire story: the immediate, profound transformation in June.
The moment Jennifer's heart stopped.
The moment.
Yeah.
The entire psychological structure that had defined June for 30 years just shattered. and a new June emerged. Instantly.
As a metamorphosis.
A staggering one. The electively mute, terrified, withdrawn woman was gone. June Gibbons began to speak.
Clearly.
Clearly, confidently, calmly. To the doctors, to the staff, the ability to engage with the world was unlocked the second the burden of that dual identity was lifted from her.
So the very thing that 11 years of intensive psychiatric treatment couldn't achieve?
Was achieved in a heartbeat. And her reflection on it, which she wrote in her diary right after, it's just chilling.
What did she write?
I'm free at last, liberated, and at last Jennifer has given up her life for me.
Given up her life for me. The language is so transactional.
It reinforces the idea that it was a necessary exchange, a business deal for June's right to an independent identity.
And today, what do the sources say about June's life now?
She's a profoundly different person, lives quietly, independently. She's described as sane, functional, integrated. She walks the earth, as one writer elegantly put it, with the energy of two souls.
So we've gone through the whole timeline. The isolation, the code, the shared psychosis, the pact. What does this all mean? What's the takeaway here for us?
It's such a specific, extreme story, but the implications are universal.
I think so, too. I mean, we all search for connection, right? For that person who just gets you, the soulmate.
The Gibbons twins found that. They found the absolute version of that. And their story is the dark shadow of that desire. It asks what happens when the mirror stops reflecting you and starts consuming you.
They were just too close.
Their intimacy became a dissolution of self. They were so intertwined they just consumed each other's potential. Their entire rivalry was a battle for a boundary they could never, ever establish while both were alive.
So the core lessons here, they're about what's required for selfhood.
And the conclusion is pretty stark. Identity requires separation. You can't know your own voice, your own desires, if your psychological space is constantly being co-authored by someone else.
So love requires distance.
It requires a healthy distance, not coldness, but a space that honors the autonomy of the self. Their story is the ultimate tragic example of a failure to individuate.
The lesson being that sometimes finding your own voice means letting go of the only hand you've ever held.
It's a terrifying thought. They truly believed a soul was only enough for one. And if we turn that dark belief back on ourselves just for a moment, it makes you think.
How so?
Well, it forces you to ask, how much of your own identity relies on the boundaries you maintain between yourself and the people you're closest to? What really happens to the self, to the unique I, when those fundamental psychological boundaries just vanish? That's the legacy of the silent twins.